The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thank you for joining in. We're just going to give it a couple of more minutes as we are expecting a few more attendees to join in and then we'll get started quickly. Thank you. We'll be back with you in a couple of minutes. Okay, thank you everyone for your patience. My name is Paresh and I'm going to be your moderator for today's webinar. Looks like we have quite a bit of attendance already. So just wanted to quickly go over some ground rules. Your mic is on mute by default. Uh, and then at the end, we will be taking a few questions. So feel free to type in your questions that you may have using the chat functionality. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker for today, Greg Baxter. Greg has spent 21 years living and breathing digital. He has held senior and founding roles in various successful web development companies, both on the agency and the client side, through to 8 years with explosive growth with award-winning software vendor Sitecore. Recently, Greg has worked on customer experience and digital growth strategies for dozens of enterprise businesses across the globe, facilitating C-level and senior management consultancy to align digital with measured positive business outcomes. Over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Paresh, and greetings, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be. Thank you so much for attending this webinar. It's going to be a pretty exciting 50 minutes or so around demystifying Sitecore personalization, particularly using quick wins to drive fast business results. As Paresh has said, I spent 8 years with Sitecore working as a territory lead for business optimization services and was fortunate to work with the five guys that really kind of wrote the book on all of this globally. So a tremendous time. I've worked personally on optimization projects with Sitecore that drove between 60 and 400% increases in key conversions. And I really want to share some of the steps that we took along the way to do that. And today we're going to work through overcoming some of the barriers that are pretty common to this undertaking, really pull apart what Sitecore personalization is and show successes from around the world based on some of the tactics that we uncover. And we are going to actually step-by-step personalize a website throughout the course of the webinar. And there is a surprise bonus offer buried in this webinar. So I'm looking forward to rolling that out. So we'll just start. I will spend just a minute and 3 or 4 slides on edynamic. We're a global digital agency very much focused on technology and marketing, all around the principle of customer engagement. As Paresh has said, I've been involved in the internet for well over 20 years, and I've watched it become a very publishing focused kind of enterprise through to a true engagement model. And, you know, when I first started, there were only a couple of hundred websites in the world, and there wasn't a lot of competition for mind share or engagement. Now, of course, with hundreds of millions of websites, we've adopted new strategies and new tactics to keep our customers and our prospects close and to really manage their journey from awareness through to a customer. Edynamic are very much Sitecore specialists. We've been a gold partner since 2003. We've delivered way more now than 200 Sitecore projects. We have 150 trained Sitecore resources on staff. We have 4 Sitecore MVPs, including our CEO, who is a Sitecore strategy MVP. And we really specialize in building a lot of reusable Sitecore connectors and accelerators to allow us to have a speed to market aspect and the ability to connect to other critical parts of the MarTech stack, like CRMs and marketing automation platforms. We work for a lot of very large companies and a lot of mid-range companies. FIS, the largest fintech company in the world, Allianz, Denton's the largest law firm in the world, and so forth. And while these customers cross a lot of verticals, they all have one thing in common. They all have customers, and they're all really charged with the concept of how do we keep our customers incredibly close? How do we increase their engagement and conversion on the website? And how can we really see who that customer is in a single view kind of aspect across all of the channels that they use. We're very fortunate to have won a great number of awards over the years. There's just a few on screen here. We won a Sitecore Site of the Year, and just recently through Marcom Awards, we won an award for WP Carey for elevated digital client engagement. So we do this pretty well. We don't tend to just build websites. We really want to build business platforms, and we do that through a view of CX. And just by fact that you're on this webinar tells me that you probably know this stuff, and I'm really not going to use a lot of statistics here. I'd rather get into the meat and potatoes of how we actually drive these outcomes. But there is no doubt that CX leaders absolutely blitz the business performance of people who are not undertaking this. And every analyst across the planet is shouting it loud and clear. But a lot of people think at this point in time that really relates to business to consumer kind of businesses. But that's really changed. B2B is far, far, far from immune to this revolution. In fact, there's some stats on the screen there that I won't sort of go through in depth, but you can see them and scan them pretty quickly. Most leading analysts now believe that in the B2B buying cycle, it is just as important to evidence personalization. It is just as important to create a frictionless customer experience. And I guess the reasons are that for obvious. In the real world, I guess, when these people are, consuming off Amazon and utilizing business to consumer sites around the world, they don't forget that experience when they walk in to do business with another company. And at this point, it's really imperative that some of the techniques that we would typically apply to a business to consumer world also get adopted by business to business. So I've been doing this for a very long time. I joined Sitecore when it was a publishing system, and I was thrilled to be a part of the team as it grew into a customer experience platform. And I have spoken to and consulted with, well, literally hundreds of companies over those years, and there are some really common things that I see. And the first one that I see is it's very difficult to get executive buy-in. And the reason for that is that personalization can be seen as a kind of a great big fuzzy ball. It's pretty hard to pinpoint what it's actually going to do for a business. It's pretty hard to understand the scope of what it's going to take to achieve that. But in reality, all of the metrics that are evidenced by work I've done personally and by Sitecore at large show that it's not just a nice to have. It's really a way to increase business conversions. So personalization is about making an elevated customer experience, but it's really very much about driving revenue and shifting the needle. Secondly, I hear this all of the time. It's a journey. And to me, that's code, consultant code, if you like, for we don't really know where the end is here. And really the sound of cash registers probably start ringing. But that's not true. You do not have to boil the ocean. It's a lot better if you don't. And today I'm going to focus very much on short burn personalization tactics and actual cases where personalization has driven revenue, sometimes in as little as 2 weeks. Then the big question is, so where do I start? And of course, in business today, we're at an imperative to drive revenue. Marketers are no longer really rewarded on things like brand amplification so much or better social reach. What CMOs and CIOs really want to see is that marketing has a measurable impact to the financial bottom line of a business. And the place to start with this is small. The place to start with this is to keep it really digestible and simple. So I'm going to give you my first example of the day. This is Scandlines. They run ferry service day trips to theme parks all over Europe, and they had a real problem. Their theme park business, which they were spending a very great amount of money on in terms of AdWords, had a really poor conversion. Their bounce rate was huge, and what they realized, the bounce rate was something like 59%. And they knew, because of the financial metrics behind that bounce, that if they could reduce that bounce rate to 35%, they would have project ROI. So they did not rebuild their entire website and start with a mind-boggling strategy around personalization. What they did was they picked that one business pain point and said, okay, we're going to fix this. And after some consulting with actually Sitecore Espos colleague of mine, they realized that within 2 weeks they could do this project from sort of start to beginning. So they focused on the AdWords, they focused on driving this revenue, and they really wanted to make an easy decision for the executive to buy in. So 2-week project, minimal cost. And what they did was take their existing AdWords, like the one that you can see on screen now for a place called Hansa Park, and that would normally push to a landing page and to a home page. So the home page, unpersonalized, had a ferocious bounce rate, and it's not too hard to understand why. Unless you align the interest of somebody coming to the website with the first experience they have on the website, they're likely to bounce. So simply by triggering rules-based personalization around campaigning, they were able to swap out one of the placeholders in the site with a great big advertisement for Hansa Park with a clear call to action saying, book now, it costs this much money, fun for the entire family. And at the end of that 2 weeks, they'd reduced their bounce rate to 24%. Remember, they were after 35 to hit ROI, and they actually recouped the money of the project in just 2 weeks. And, you know, that's a really quick win. It's not a huge strategy. It was measurable because, of course, Sitecore delivers those metrics, and it had immediate impact, firstly in revenue to the business, but also in not losing revenue on AdWords that were failing over and over and over again. So that's one of the tactics that we see. And that didn't happen because somebody sat down and drew up something like this, you know, the enormous customer journey map that we see all of the time. Sometimes, I mean, these things are important in the really long run, but this does not make me want to come to work on a Monday morning. This makes me think this is complicated, it's going to take 100 years to do, and for all I know, the world will have moved on by the time I get to the end. So short burn personalization exercises don't have that complexity. The second thing is, with platforms like Sitecore, you don't have this incredible marketing technology landscape issue. I mean, marketers don't want to be product managers, and when you build Frankenstein-like MarTech stacks out of, you know, tons and tons and tons of different systems, that is what you end up becoming. So edynamic has created a thing called the Revenue Engine Roadmap, and today we're very much going to focus on this concept of time to value, and that's an offering that we have around delivering personalization outcomes that are a lot more than just 1 or 2 campaigns inside a 30-day time frame. So we'd like to take businesses who may have a CMS down in the traditional sector down there. They have a CMS, but they're really just using it to shovel content into the pile. They'll have traffic analytics that might tell them, you know, how many people are going to a particular page and, you know, how long they sat on that page and so forth, but not really talking or uncovering conversions. They may use spray and pray email marketing where they'll, you know, load up the shotgun cannon and blast the same email to every single person on their list, which of course does not work and in fact is brand damaging. And they might do some ad hoc social. So what you're going to see today is really stuff that is made of this time to value thing, where we immediately turn on engagement analytics. This is far, far simpler than people think. It's very easy to set up personalization. It's very easy to define a project if you know the steps to undertake. And we would always recommend in this phase doing some real-time profiling and some A/B testing. Profiling is super interesting because you know who's on your website in real time, and you can create a fairly simple user journey, maybe just 2 or 3 steps from awareness through to decision, and drive that if you know who is on your website. When we go much larger, we talk about the revenue engine, and you guys are in the same business I'm in, and you've probably seen the announcements by Salesforce this week around huge Sitecore integration investments, and also Google Analytics doing much the same thing. And that's because the world has realized that stuff that's going on the website is incredibly rich and valuable customer data, and it can't just be flushed down the river, never to be seen again. That data should integrate with your marketing automation platform. So if I'm looking at top of the funnel outbound stuff when I arrive at the website, I have a top of the funnel experience, and both those platforms should track me through my customer journey, and they should hone their messaging to get me to a confirmed customer point. And all of that information in that journey really should be pushed through to a CRM, because in business in particular, or even in large retail, the purchase does not occur online. So that's kind of the big picture that we see, but we are going to look at, the first steps that we take on this journey. And the first 3 steps really are about Sitecore engagement analytics, rules-based personalization, and profiling and predictive personalization. And the truth of the matter here is that if you don't actually switch on Sitecore engagement analytics, you have literally thrown the baby out with the bathwater. You have thrown away the measurement tools that you need to construct personalization and to prove business uplift. I have literally lost count of the number of times I've walked into a company, said, fantastic, let's start, let's log in and look at your experience analytics, only to see empty dashboards, because there are no goals set up, there are no profiles set up, and the incredible richness of the Sitecore experience is lost immediately. So this can't be any way to start. So I'm going to show you an example from Nutricia Danone, who had an unbelievably great business outcome with this. And the way you approach Sitecore analytics is to zoom out a little bit first and do all of this in an alignment structure. So we like to sit down and work out what a strategic objective is. And by the way, we do all of this in our time to value workshop. Then we look at the marketing objectives underneath that a company tends to undertake that lead to the outcomes of the strategic objective. And only then do we start to map the digital goals that we're going to record on the website. And we only record the critical few. You're free to plug in Google Analytics or whatever for other metrics, but what we want to do here is track the steps, in the journey that somebody takes to go from an interested customer to an actual customer. And for a business that drove such incredible value and such great financial outcomes as Nutricia, it's surprising to see how simple the Sitecore engagement value scale is. And these all align to those to that strategic framework we put together. So down at the bottom, you could visit an online shop, view stuff, and you're just tire kicking. So we don't really place a score on that, but it's nice to know people at top of funnel. If somebody then goes on and uses a situation slider, my child has an allergy or whatever, they award some points. Interestingly enough, if somebody actually purchases, they only give it 15 points, because like most companies, selling one of their products does not make them happy. Ongoing sales and memberships and the ability to resell and repeat purchase makes them happy. Contact care line, complete my situation, membership sign up confirmed. So you don't need to sit there and drown yourself in analytics. It's amazing what you can do with small data. And you'll see as we start to build our site a little bit later what that really means. So the outcomes of this were a pretty staggering 75% average monthly growth, and really importantly for this business, a 140% average monthly rebuy. But just think about those business results, which are stunning, and think about how much they whittled down what they were aiming to have their website do. Just a few key metrics and some really focused personalization that align to that strategic framework that they created. So around Sitecore Analytics, we're going to start with Honda. So I decided I'd pick a car dealer. It doesn't really matter what business this is. I've worked with airports, I've worked with medical companies, I've worked with banks, I've worked with all kinds of companies, and you always start in the same place, and that place is understanding analytics. So if we look at Honda's website here, And I really just kind of put this together, you know, without the kind of consultancy that I would normally do here. I mean, a big strategic objective for those guys would be to be the top choice for cars. And really importantly for a car dealer, it's all about aftercare, right? So they don't make that much money out of selling a car, but they sure make a lot of money out of servicing it for the next sort of 3 years. And the ideal automotive customer is, and not too unusually for any business, is the kind of customer that buys 3 cars in 10 years. So they flip their car. So they want to lock people in for long periods of time. So if that's their strategic objective, the business objective is to drive new car sales, of course, but also to increase service. And they'll do their tactics around new car sales are booking test drives and contacting the dealer. Not very many people buy a car, you know, with a credit card at this point in time. So right now there's a really time-honored path between clicks and bricks in this particular business. And of course, booking a service comes into play as soon as you actually buy a car. We don't know right now what the digital goals are on the website that will drive this magical thing, alignment with this kind of framework. So we'll sit down and we'll start to record which goals should make it to the rarefied air of the Sitecore engagement value scale. And I've put at the very top, purchase car book service for 100 points. Book test drive contact dealer at 75 points. Use a finance calculator at 50 points. Use a dealer locator at 30. Watch a video, download a PDF, you know, the usual kind of awareness stuff down at the bottom. So you could consider the 2 bottom segments down there, 2 and 10, as sort of top of funnel. The 2 middle pieces, the use finance calculator and use dealer locator, middle of funnel. So for example, if I went onto a website and looked for my local dealership and then started, you know, running calculations on the website using the calculator about how much money I'm going to need, what sort of deposit I'm going to need, how long it'll take to pay off and all of that kind of stuff, I'm showing pretty clear intent. And what the website ought to do the next time I visit it, or the next email I get from this particular company, or the next social piece of action I see from this business for me specifically, should be about book a test drive, contact dealer, because that moves me towards my purchase point. So as I move up the Sitecore engagement value scale, my value to the business increases, and so does my commitment to the brand or the product that I'm looking at. If you tip this on the side, it's a very simplified user journey. And the reason we don't keep this overly complex is that we want to drive a crystal clear sense of what this website should do. So really, when you're looking and planning around this stuff, really strip it back to the stuff that will actually shift revenue. So I'd like to introduce a little bit of an offer that edynamic has right now. We've been looking at the world of software and the way the world is going commercially right now, and we realize that triability is kind of a big thing. And we thought we'd sort of offer this to you all. So what we're saying is that I would look at your website and work with you and then build out recommendations on that engagement value scale. But beyond that, we'd have our team actually build it out for you. So you would immediately be able to log into Sitecore Analytics and see the core conversions that your website is driving or not driving. And then you can, of course, make decisions about whether you have the content that drives those conversions, whether the actual user experience corrals people towards those conversions, and we could start to really strategize on maybe what kinds of personalization would work to get you there. You can see my email address down there. I'd be very happy to receive email from any of you around this. Obviously, we can only do this for a finite number, but I'd certainly love the opportunity to work, you know, with you. So to take this first major step. Now let's get into the meat and potatoes of what we're trying to achieve here. We really start with rules-based personalization, and this is the low-hanging fruit of Sitecore's personalization strategy. It's pretty simple stuff, and it's designed for a marketer to be able to do this without having IT attached at the hip. So when you first, or any time you visit a website, your browser collects quite a lot of information sitting underneath the hood. And what Sitecore have done, have created a kind of capability for you to look at that data and then affect what people see based on it. So your website can personalize based on campaign. It can personalize based on date and time. And if you're somebody like Honda or retail, there are a number of, you know, key dates, e-com dates around the world that you'd really want to have personalization around. It can personalize on geolocation, it can personalize on marketing keywords, referral visits, and so forth. When you're actually on the website and you're kind of still in the moment, but you're moving through things, a whole bunch of events and activities occur that we can also track and personalize on. It might be your third visit to the website. Let's say I go to my Honda website and I see a testimonial and I click on it and I read that testimonial. There is no reason in the world that that valuable screen real estate should still have that same testimonial on it the next time I visit. I would immediately swap that out. I would have fired a goal on testimonial read, and then I would instruct the website that if that testimonial is read for this specific customer, swap it out and show a video, or swap it out and show an offer. It can be on, of course, on any goal triggered. So when you looked at that engagement value scale before, as I said, if I looked at a finance calculator, the next messaging in the website messaging really ought to be book test drive, because that really moves me towards the point of a financial conversion. So there are some really easy steps that you can undertake around this. So what we need to do firstly is start to define what it is we're going to do. So we would have our engagement value scale here, and of course if it makes it, if a goal makes it to the engagement value scale, then clearly it is what we're going to personalize towards. So I typically choose a number of rules. So we're going to choose where on the website to personalize. The hero image is a no-brainer. You know, it's the first thing people see, and I love it when I see carousels on a website, and I always wonder who sits there and, you know, waits for it to scroll through or clicks through it. I like to see that replaced with really specific personalized pieces, and of course, if no personalization is triggered, you see the carousel. We might also choose a feature spot on the page. So a nice place where we can utilize information around profile, and of course down the bottom, maybe in this case a vehicle preference spot would be a useful thing to do. Notice we don't personalize at all, and we don't do that because we don't want to put people into a personalization bubble, and we also want to be able to show places where no personalization happens so that people can see the breadth of the offering. There are a number of rules that I use all of the time, and I use them all of the time because they work. Campaign personalization is a no-brainer, and you'll see a number of examples around that throughout the rest of this session. We also use profiling, and that's an area that people do really struggle with. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more in a moment, and we're really going to simplify this concept of profiling. It gets so mixed up with personas and so forth, and people make it way more complex than it really needs to be. I use date and time personalization all the time. I use goal conversion all of the time, since that is what constructs the user journey and instruments the website to show the next step I want a customer to take when they've converted on one of the user journey goals. I use visit number all of the time, and I use geolocation all of the time. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of rules inside the Sitecore experience platform that you can utilize. These are ones that I just find that get used very, very frequently. So now I'm going to step into the kind of murky and interesting world of profiling, and it really is kind of the space where people tend to struggle, and they tend to struggle because it's very mixed up with this concept of a persona. And you know, when personas were first developed, they were created as devices so that creatives and content writers had some kind of fictitious character around which to construct content. But it becomes unbelievably complex and hard if you decide that you're going to use these personas as some kind of key towards personalization. And the reasons for that are pretty obvious. Here's Jill, you know, she's supposedly an extrovert, she's more sensible, uses more sense and intuition, she's more about feeling than thinking, she's more about perceiving than judging, and all of this stuff. But this is Jill set in stone. Jill is not always like this. Sometimes Jill will be more thinking about a decision and so forth. So there are much simpler ways to drive profiling, machine profiling, than to rely on these personas. If you really drill into the persona thing, you will find yourself suffering the exploding head syndrome, and it will just become unbelievably complex in order to do something which works best when it's done simply, and when it's black or it's white. You're this right now or you're that right now. I'm looking at this piece of content right now or I'm not. So I really want to use this Honda example and show you how you can simplify the who and the what around personalization. Forget all of the fuzzy things like attitude and what channels I want to use and all of that stuff for the moment. So whenever I look at profiling, the first thing I think is, well, if I were in a store and somebody walked in, the first thing I would ask is, how can I help you? You know, what do you want? And when people click around websites, they tell us what they want. You don't spend a lot of time or repeat clicks clicking on stuff that is not relevant to you. Secondly, I try to figure out what their budget is, you know, how much money they've got to spend and what I can cross or upsell. And thirdly, where are they in the buyer journey? This is enough to start. It kind of really is. So let's take a look at what product or service we might offer in terms of a Honda in the world. So the first profile I would create, what do you want, would be around vehicle preference. Are you interested in a Civic or a Accord or a CRV or whatever? And to find these profile keys, all you really need to do is actually look at your own navigation. You've already figured this out and you've already sweated money and time to make an intuitive user experience on the website. So all websites have a submenu that is around products and services. So your first profile around product or service is, what do you want? And the answer's there in your navigation, and this person has clicked on a CRV and they've looked at, you know, a number of other cars as well, but over time the clicks around a CRV show a pattern, and that pattern means that they're interested in that car. So it doesn't make much sense for them to get an email about a sports car. It doesn't make much sense for them to see a hero image the next time they come to the website around a, you know, a family sedan. They're clearly interested in a type of vehicle. What's happening now is that we're slowly clarifying this picture of our user. We've started to get a glimpse of them. We don't know who they are yet, but we certainly know what they want. And our job really is to utilize, you know, a couple of these profile pieces in order to understand more. The second thing that I would like to understand is budget. How do we know what kind of budget this particular user wants? And again, the answer is in the navigation. When I go to the new CRV page and I see a menu item called accessories, I can click on it and I can choose custom leather interior, a groovy, you know, steering wheel, a sunroof. And every time I click on that stuff, I'm telling this business what my budget is. Is this an entry-level model CRV, or is this one with all of the bells and whistles? And it makes an enormous difference. Yeah, so I'm able to determine budget, and it doesn't matter whether you're looking at airline travel, it doesn't matter whether you're looking at types of credit cards, whether it's a gold card or a platinum card, you can always establish the kind of budget that somebody has. And the reason we want to establish budget is that if I'm looking at, you know, a low-end CRV, this business should be trying to interest me in going at least to medium. So I could set a profile goal that said, if I'm profiled as a low value buyer, maybe the next time I come to the website, I see a fantastic image of the sunroof and some other feature that's going to entice me to spend a little bit more money. In this case, happily the user has gone through and clicked on a whole bunch of accessories and chosen the paint color that they want and all of that kind of stuff, and the budget's quite high. So naturally, I want to personalize towards this human. They've got money, they're looking like they're going to buy, and so forth. So we know just a little bit more. There's a little bit more clarity in who our particular customer is right now. And the third thing I'm going to look at is the buyer journey. And I've got bottom of funnel, middle of funnel, top of funnel. No need to get overly complex here. You can do an enormous amount of optimization by keeping all of these factors really simple. So if we look at our engagement value scale, it's pretty clear. Top of funnel is compare models and watch a video, maybe download a PDF. Yeah. Middle of funnel is when I start to actually show buying incentive. I look for a dealer locator, which means I'm looking for a dealer close to me. I'm likely going to get in my car and travel. And if I use a finance calculator, I'm kind of working out whether I have the money to afford the car of my dreams. If I then book a test drive or book service, I'm very much bottom of funnel. And of course, you would be wanting as a business to do everything you can to get me to take those steps. So once I'd perhaps booked or bought a car, the book service thing comes into play. So 3 months after I bought a car, I should get an automated email out that says the car's ready for a service, because the last thing this company wants me to do is take this to a budget service business where they can't sell me.
Hi, sorry about this, guys. Seems like Greg is having some problem with the system. He'll be back in a few seconds.
Hey Paresh, it's Greg here. Paresh?
Hey, Greg, sorry, I think your system hung out. You can continue now.
Hi, it's Greg again. Sorry, I had a laptop crash. I'm really struggling with it. I'm just catching myself up. Paresh, you could let me know that you can hear okay and I'm back on the air?
Yeah, Greg, you're fine. We can continue.
Okay. My apologies, everybody. I have a brand new laptop and it is having teething problems. So I'd created a second machine here ready to move on in case that unfortunate thing occurred. And it did. So we're going to go back now to where I was before. I do apologize, but happily we've been able to be pre-prepared for this. So top of funnel, as I was, or bottom of funnel, as I was saying, book a car or book service. So this user or this customer goes through and actually uses the dealer locator. So this is recorded as a goal. And of course that should trigger the next step in personalization. So the answer to where are you in the buyer journey is inside your engagement value scale. And this particular user is middle of funnel right now. And if I'm a middle of funnel user, I should see messaging around that, but I should also see the signposts and the graphics and the calls to action that make me take the next step and move to the bottom of the funnel. And then I have real clarity on who my user is. We have a very clear picture at this point. So just clicking through. So now we're going to bring it all together. We've really got a sense of who this person is based on the triangulation of product preference, buyer journey, and budget. So what we want to do now is really make this work from the perspective of what do we personalize across the hero image, the feature spot, and so forth. So let's make an assumption that this is visit number 2, and we've recorded some of the some of the product preference stuff that we just talked about. So we know that this person's interested in a CRV, and right now the hero image actually has just the Honda annual event, which is not of relevance to this particular customer. So let's swap that out with the campaign that is sitting there in the background around CRVs. So the next time this customer or prospect comes back to the website, it's talking to them with incredible relevance about the kinds of things that they're interested in. We also know a little bit of their profile, so it doesn't make much sense to have a Honda Jazz down the bottom, given that we know they're looking at a CRV. So we might swap that out with really CRV specific stuff. And I would say that, we would probably be tracking this person to the point of recording what color paint they want. So the right color paint is there. And we'd also be tracking goal conversion. So remember, this person's looked at at the dealer locator. So we want to make it really easy for them to book a test drive. So just for this user and just for this visit perhaps, or until this goal is converted, right on the home page, there is an easy fill out form for them to book a test drive. Don't make them click on something. Don't make them hunt for it. It's amazing how many times I see the major conversion for business goals hidden in very small links. So we'll just make this super prevalent for this person. and they're very likely to do it. And using geolocation, I would also say to them, hey, you know, your dealer or your local dealer or your closest dealer is 1.2 miles from you or kilometers from you, whatever it might be. So you can get there quickly and easily. You're going to see the right car. And if I were the actual dealer, when that test drive came up, I would be looking at what color paint this person wanted. I would be looking at what features this person wanted in the car, and I would be talking to my stock controller and making sure that very car was sitting on the lot. Yeah, just to completely align this with the user's online experience. So, you know, a number of companies have actually done this in real life. This is Nissan. They did a lot of this stuff, and I wasn't kind of kidding about, you know, test drives and contact dealer being the top of the engagement value scale for dealers in this case. And what Nissan experienced was a 150% increase in test drive applications and a 150% increase in dealer contacts. After the fact, Nissan came back and said their internal business metric is that 1 out of 2 customers who take a test drive buy a Nissan. So the team that put this strategy together drove purchases of Nissans up by 75% off the website. Those are rock star conversions compared to the, you know, 2 to 5% that is pretty common conversion rates across the web. Similarly with contact dealers, and of course anybody who's marketing digitally in the world now, and right now that's everybody, is wanting to decrease the wastage of their AdWords. So a company like Nissan would spend many millions of dollars a year on outbound marketing, targeted search marketing and so forth, and they experienced a happy 30% decrease in bounce on their targeted search. So, you know, these are fantastic business outcomes that are being driven. And what we're actually doing is driving, you know, a digital marketing transformation, and it's imperative right now to take these steps. It's absolutely a given that the companies that do this are outperforming the companies that are not doing it. And, you know, the way to do this is to find very quick wins and to move in and make it work for you. So that's a couple of little words on really how we think we should approach this. And I'd like to open up the floor now to questions, if that's okay. Paresh, do we have any?
Yes, Greg. So looks like we do have a couple of questions. I'm just going to pull them up right now and give me 1 second. So the first question that we have is, how do we go about assigning profiles to content?
Okay, that's a really good question, and you know there are 2 ways to do this. Firstly, you can assign a profile using the content editor inside Sitecore. Once it's built, it's very simple to build that, but that's a little bit like after the fact tagging metadata onto a page. A profile is really just it's a tag like any other piece of metadata that gets recorded when somebody visits a particular page. There is a better way to do it, and that is to actually append the profile value to the template of the page that you're creating while you're doing the wireframe build out. What that means is that let's say anytime I add a new part or a new piece of content around that CRV, because of where it is in the information architecture and the template that it uses, it will automatically adopt that profile. So content authors don't have to worry about it once that strategy has been implemented. The other thing that you can do is apply those things programmatically. So I worked in Singapore actually with an enormous company that made billion-dollar real estate kind of development. So they build gigantic theme parks, they build gigantic schools and hospitality precincts and, you know, science centers and all of that kind of stuff. And they had, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I think it was 3,600 pages just on case studies alone. And these case studies were going to be tagged with, is this an industrial park? Is this a, you know, a science center? Is this a school? Blah, blah, blah. And we were able to utilize Sitecore to actually search through the content, identify those pieces of content that were relevant, and then programmatically assign those profiles to all of the results. And we ended up profiling something like 6,000 pages in an afternoon. So it can be done very, very rapidly.
Okay. There's one other, I think one last question. It says not all goals can be triggered out of the box. How can we do that? How can we trigger some rules which are out of the box?
Okay, that's true. So, you know, when you do things like, I don't know, download a PDF, you're able to, as a marketer, assign the goal to that. If you use Sitecore's web forms for marketers, the first thing that it asks you to do is assign a goal to the particular form that you're going to make. But a lot of customers already have forms, or they use custom forms, or they really just want to click on a piece of code that exposes a phone number or something like that. So there is a really simple line of .NET code that's available everywhere, GitHub and so forth, that you can assign that will track a button click and then fire a goal inside Sitecore. So that doesn't have to be the barrier that you would think. And when we made the offer around, you know, we'll help you build out your engagement value scale and we'll actually help you implement it and make it work, the reason that we were able to make that call was that we know that it won't take our programmers very long to go through and actually create any code that we may need to trigger a particular goal. So we're really confident we can do this. We're really confident we can do this in a small amount of time.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Those were the two questions that we had on the chat box.
Okay, fantastic. So I'd like to thank all of the attendees for being a part of today. I really appreciate that so many of you turned out to listen. And I imagine, Paresh, will probably post this as a recording and send all of the attendees a link.
Greg, sorry, we just got one other question that just popped up. How do you link a value from a landing page to the main website?
Oh, okay. That's when you build a landing page. You can basically go into the Sitecore campaign creator and create a campaign. And what that basically does, and the most important thing that does, is give you a piece of code that you can append to the inbound URL. And then when you have that landing page built out, you go into the marketing center and then you assign an attribute to that particular page saying it is a part of this campaign. That's literally a few minutes work. And if that particular question you would like to email me on greg.baxter@edynamic.net, I'd be happy to walk them through that. But it's really quite simple once you've done it once or twice.
Okay, thank you. So I think that is it. So yes, we will be emailing out the recording of this webinar to all the attendees. So that should happen within a couple of days. So at this point, we would like to thank everyone for attending our webinar. Thank you, Greg, for the great insightful presentation, and I hope you guys have a great day ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you everybody, and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.
Bye now.